Let's see. Are we live? We are just live on a different live altogether. So we're going to delete that one previously, deleting it forever. That live is done. We are now live on another chat. Live on another chat. We'll just tell everybody to join. Okay. So, everybody, unfortunately, sorry guys for technical issues. I don't know why it is. We had quite a few technical issues joining today.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and I have a guest with me, a special guest, Mary, who is here. She's pretty popular for quite a few different videos you've had that gone like major viral. Yeah.
Thanks.
So the and you talk about all kind. I don't know what topics you're kind of in, but it's definitely like a realm of philosophy, I would say.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm just adjusting my little thing to get more in the middle, like you said.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
the thing is that I feel like philosophy is a gateway into thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like no one's thinking. And so this is my gateway into hopefully all of us trying to think together. And then
Mm.
from there, we could maybe even go into the more mythical stuff that people don't understand that's more energy based.
Okay, okay. And so the you've had a quite a one of the videos that really caught my attention. You had one that was kind of really funny, and the internet has censored you because of your video to the point where you've uploaded it twice and they've removed the audio. And and they've removed the audio on a few different videos, and it was talking about gender stuff, and it was pretty interesting. And some of the things you said were very profound, but I think they sort of balked at this narrative of the system that they're trying to sell everybody right now. And yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Mm.
Well, I'm glad that you said that because it makes me frustrated.
Mm.
The gender thing is something I really would like to talk about so much, but I've gotten the direct impression because every time I put anything on gender, they wipe the audio from my video multiple times.
Wow.
And
Mm.
telling me that this is one of the most detrimental topics for them. It's one of the most dangerous for them. Really do appreciate all the recent information that's Macron's in France recently, more light on the fact that in these occult bubbles is and that gender confusion is a gateway to deeper confusion. And I feel that type of the devil uses confusion in a myriad of ways to get to people. So I would love to go into that more, but the internet tries to stop me from doing that. Yeah.
You're kind of a sort of an enigma, and you're kind of like something that would break a lot of those norms, because I would say you're sort of in that. I don't know if I'm pinning you right, because we haven't had a full conversation. We only talked a little bit, but I would be like, you feel like I feel like you kind of fit in the new age sort of category where a lot of that gender stuff is very pervasive,
Mhm.
where a lot of that's kind of like that whole environment. It's all over there, and you're literally like breaking the paradigm with logic in a way that's like very, very simple for a lot of people to understand. And so it's like you're like acid to the narrative in a lot of ways because of the things you're bringing up. Because I love the way you put it. What was it? It was like, why are you gay or something? It was like, why do you insist on talking about your sexual identity? Wouldn't that be weird? Like if I just talked about my sexual identity and that was like the only thing you talked about, and then like when you said that video was so funny, it was so good, and it's such a wake up call to I think so many people to be like really be like, wait, why are we just absorbed with our sexual identity? Like this is definitely a privilege. Like other people in other countries don't like everything you said in that video. I kind of resounded with, and I was like, wow, this girl gets it. Like that's straight up the reality that we're faced with. But yeah, it was profound.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, you know what's interesting is it went to 1 million views and then it paused. And then it just started going really viral really fast. Like the graph you can
Mm.
see in the analytics, the graph shot up really fast. And then right as it shot up, they removed the audio. So it's just fascinating to me that there is some force that doesn't want us to just sit down and have a convo. And I'm very open. I have some friends who are like David Bowie in my life, where they're very like fluid energetically in terms of the masculine feminine energy. So I can really understand that. What I don't understand is when the gender ideology is used as a way to morph people in forms of identity, where someone says they're gay and all of a sudden they develop a lisp. Why did
Yeah.
that all of a sudden
Yes.
alter the way your voice is coming out? There's more
Hmm.
indiscrepancies that need to be, or discrepancies, sorry, that need to be understood here. That's all. I just want to talk about it, and the internet doesn't want me to, so.
No, it's great. I mean, I kind of am in the same space. I come at it from a very Christian-y perspective, I guess you could say. Like I'm obviously a Christian in my perspective, and so when I look at this sort of stuff, I kind of see it as demons. And so my
Mhm.
perspective that I've like started to recognize is like a lot of this is tethered to demonic things going on. And if you don't like the world, looking at the world from the outside, a lot of times it seems like it's just like, why do they do this? Why are they doing that? What's going on here? What's going on there? And it just seems kind of chaotic. But when
Mhm.
you start to like see the picture from the reality that, hey, wait, what if there is like a genuine evil that's trying to manipulate and control everything? And that genuine evil is invisible and it's affecting stuff. Like, how would it be affecting it? It's demons. And like when you start to like realize this kind of aspect, you're like, wait a second, there's something going on behind the scenes that starts to affect a lot of people's minds. And like how is that, how is these things affecting people? Magic and witchcraft people think are like silly fake things, but it's very real in a way, but people just don't know what it is. And so like I try to explain that to people so that way they think hypnosis is not real. Well, hypnosis is magic, and it is very real. And people think these kind of things are not associated, and but they are absolutely associated when you start to see the patterns. So I think it's a really interesting sort of bridge that people, if they think a little like you're suggesting them to do, it might start waking them up to that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know what your thoughts on that might be, but it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think
Hmm.
it's mm, what is the word? I think the word for me is it's mystical,
Hmm.
that the way in which different lines of reality intercross, different timelines, different shifts. I think all of this is mystical, and this is why in the 1990s and 2000s, early 2000s, there was such a push to get people hooked on the scientific viewpoint of atheism and materialistic reductionism. And I believe that even us as children, I was a child then, I think our minds were forced, or not forced, but formed into thinking that anything that is mystical is absolutely crazy. And, you know, if I get really nice comments on my usually, but if I get a mean one, it's like, who let the schizo out?
Mm.
And I think that's funny because you've been programmed to think that anyone that is philosophically trying to earth the trenches of this reality is schizo. When in truth, these truths that we're seeking to understand are correlated to mystical. What I've noticed and observed is that through the Christian culture these days, I feel there's not enough, and I'm not saying this about you, but this is my trepidation sometimes around. I feel like there's just black and white thinking sometimes where people will go, oh, okay, like you're gay, therefore it must be to a demon. And I have some friends who are gay, and I think they're some of the most beautiful, pure beings I've met. And then you can understand as well, though, how some of these sexual morphings can also connect to some sort of dark form of consciousness. And I think the demonic world is complicated, I guess, is what I'm getting at, is that there's different tiers of entities. I think it goes from ideological thought forms. Like Plato spoke about how many things were in sort of solidified shape form in other realms. And then from there, you get into a place of, oh, this could be a demon, this could be an egregore, this could be a thought form. And I would be interested to see a map of the mystical world and to understand what is what, and also for us to sit back and figure out, okay, this might be demonic, but maybe this is just your desire to explore the feminine, and then society has sort of pushed you in the way of exploring it in an obscure, odd way. So I'm learning about this right now, but I think it's complicated, and I think the internet doesn't do well with complicated these days. It doesn't do well because it wants things that pander to a short attention span, probably.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. The there's an interesting individual that cast out demons and who left the Church of Satan, who is very much exposes a lot of stuff. And I'm of a belief. I'll tell you where I'm at of a belief.
Mm-hmm.
I'm of a belief that God created us with a purpose and a pattern. And so I believe that there is a God that made all of us. And that sort of perspective kind of bends to an understanding that there's got to be there may be some order. Like there's an order to the way we were designed. Like we have two eyes, we have two nostrils. Like there's an order and there's a function to everything that we have. And so I think of like intellectual design, intelligent design as like that there's got to be some kind of order to the way God has created us and the function for us. And I totally see what you mean by like the Christian view could be black and white in a lot of ways. And they can become very much I don't know, like pitchforky and hunt you down without listening to what the person's actually saying. And that a lot of times is pride that I think that gets into the Christian worldview, where they like to say, I'm right, you're wrong. Not that there's no nuances. And that's the unfortunately there's that downside to that, but my people here, most of them are pretty good at like being respectful of people even if they don't agree with them. And so they've like learned to actually do what Jesus taught, which is to love people, not to condemn. It's like we're supposed to walk in unity and love. And so no matter what the person, if we disagree or agree, whatever, it's irrelevant. Like what's important is that there is common grounds in understanding things, and like we can work on those things that we're like, hey, this may not be perfect, like, and here's why, and we can explain those questions down the road or whatever. But I think that the Christian sort of the Christian view is that there is like, or at least my Christian view perspective, I guess, is that God created me and created you, and He created everything with this order. And the more we go to the natural order of the way things are, the more happier our life will be, and the better our environment and our community will be. Like, and we can see this kind of like in the ancient texts of like the Native Americans, like they lived in a way that was not resource destroying of the land. It was in a way that was in unity with one another, to the point where I read books from the 1800s. I was just reading one from the 1800s that I have that is about Christian missionaries and stuff that came to the Native Americans, and they were the Native Americans were like, why do you want us to show us this? Like, you white men steal, like, and we don't steal. And they were like, your white people are all being hung and killed, and we're not being hung and killed, because they didn't even have really a very strong concept of stealing in their communities, because they all worked in unity, and they just said, hey, we're all equal, we love each other, we're all together, what's mine is yours, and I help one another. And I think this is what the biggest point of evil that I think in the world has been created, is this idea of supremacy, or that we're different in some capacity, and that there's like and it all stems from pride, and which, by the way, the Bible says that Satan fell from pride. Pride was the sin that Satan fell from. But the really interesting part is that, like, when we think I'm better than you, or you're better than me, or any kind of unequaling thought, that thought alone, or that I'm different than you in some capacity, and that I'm different than you than the way God designed me, is like that thought, I think, is what stems so much of the evils of this world. And it's like, that's the reason why, the little hat people do all this terrible stuff to all these people, because they think that they are superior, as we can obviously see from the Epstein files. It's pretty obvious that there's like this mindset of superiority, and that's kind of what stems a lot of the wickedness. But it's controlled and fed through people believing in it's really pride is a lot of the biggest kind of thing that I've seen in stuff. People that are too prideful to, and it's been the problem in all walks and all religious views and everything. Like the Christians, like we don't, sometimes we get so prideful in our own views that we like don't even listen to what the other person's saying, or what the other person's thought is, or what the other person's trying to convey. And it's like, that's where the enemy creeps in, and we don't find unity, and there's like a division that starts to happen there. I don't know if that resounds with your perspective, but
It totally does. Yeah. And before I
mm-hmm.
reply, I just want to let people know, if I'm if I'm looking to the right at weird times, I'm definitely having a little bit of a pixel issue, and I'm looking at the monitor to check on it. So I don't want people to think that I'm like judging you with my eyes, because I'm just trying to check the
You're
monitor
totally
thing.
fine. You're totally
But
fine.
I really like that you brought that up, because from my understanding, I'm obsessed with psychology and understanding the human mind, and how we've gotten into a position where people seem to be incapable of thinking. And they're incapable of thinking because of black and white thinking, because black and white thinking has been sewn into our psyche, whether we
Mm.
are Christian, whether we are atheist, whether we are NPC, like whatever you are, whatever category you want to put yourself in, whether it's a good one or a bad one. In the end of the day, if there's black and white thinking, uh, what that allows us to do is it allows us to get caught in this idea that we are separate from the potential to fall.
Mm.
And I think that if we have that knowing ingrained into our souls, okay, this person did this horrible thing, I could have done that too, if I had chosen that, if I had gone down a different path, if I was more confused. I'm not saying that it's okay when people do certain things, like the stuff coming up with the island as of late. Obviously, that's abhorrent and extremely dark, and I'm so happy it's coming out. But at the same time, it's when we separate ourselves from a sense of not being willing to understand, how did this happen. And the way that it happened is that we formed a culture that is obsessed with materialism. We formed a culture that is devoid of God and devoid of soul. And because we did that, we created humans that were easy containers for demons. These humans that are doing these horrible things on these islands, they are like a feast for a demon, because that idea that nothing mythological or mystical exists, this idea that people keep throwing around, that everything in the Bible was just a story, was just an archetype, that to me is so ridiculous. Because when you see something as a human, is your first thought, let me transpose this into a metaphor, and then let me try to communicate this by twisting it into a story that's kind of crazy and obscure. Usually, as a human, our best skill set is to be the storyteller, to transfer data amongst tribes and amongst different religions and cultures by sitting around the fire and talking about what we know as humans. And the fact that we've been led to believe that all of this mythos is just something that a schizophrenic would come up with, has caused us to be very confused as to how demonic forces can work. And the way that these demonic forces work is, if they can convince you that, they're not real, that mystical energy is just something that some high hippie at a festival is talking about. If they can convince you of that, then they've got complete capacity to enter into the body that you carry, because you
Mm.
don't know what protection is, because you don't know that you even need it. You're not going to study something you don't think you need. And I think
Mm.
that because we have this culture of ignorance in terms of energy and in terms of have these entities, which is probably why CERN exists, right? Because humans as a whole collectively are open to the idea, open to the degree in which you dissociate. If you dissociate from a truth, that means you're open to the corruption and corrosion of it, I believe. So yeah,
Mm.
I agree with what you're saying, and I thinking it splits people where either they're like, oh, they're super fear driven, and that actually pulls different of life in when you're fear driven, or they think, oh, none of that is real. So we have this split realm of consciousness that is just creating more loosh and more entropy for humankind. And until humans can sit down and understand, my mind is not healthy when it splits, it is healthy when it sees things happen, so I don't allow those things to persist. I think that's what we're supposed to maybe evolve into if we can.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, there's a another aspect that I've noticed is like labels, and I think labels are also probably one of the most dangerous things in our entire society. And it kind of makes me think about like what you're describing. Because like when you say I'm this, it in a sense it is a black and white. Like if you say you're gay or you're straight or you're whatever, it doesn't matter. Like when you label yourself, you're saying I'm different than you and I'm this way and I'm not that way. And now you try to force yourself to fit into that box. What are your thoughts on that kind of perspective? I'm curious.
Yeah, that's a good point. I
Mm-hmm.
think that the labeling has given an entire culture that is sort of addicted to victim consciousness a chance to feel seen. And
Mm-hmm.
my question is, why does everyone not feel seen? Why do we need to talk about our labels all the time? As someone who has traveled to so many different countries and understood how much privilege we have to just exist in America right now, like I get people all the time who tell me, "Oh, you're so privileged because you're white." I'm like, "I'm privileged because I live in America." I actually think we have a lot of blessings here, and I think it's silly to
Mm-hmm.
just think one race is privileged. I think we should base privilege more off of what rights you have
Income or
as a
something,
human
yeah.
being. Yeah, and I just feel like for some reason, maybe it was with humans being put through the assembly line, the sort of Ford assembly line of public schooling, where their brains were treated like a byproduct of something more sinister. I think that caused a whole generation of people to feel so unseen that their entire lives became around obsession with the label of who they are. When what I realized is these people starving for food in these other countries that I visited, they would feel disgusted by me if I sat down and said, "Let me tell you about my label and what I am and what I mean to
Mm.
the world." And I don't know about you, but like if I'm ever meeting someone for the first time and they go on about who they are and what they represent, to me, that's a red signal because you talk about what you are and what you represent to the degree in which you don't know yourself. And if you have to continue to defend to the world who you are, without trusting that the world can very easily see who you are without you having to put labels all over it, that means a part of you doesn't really know you and doesn't really trust you, and you're trying to project who you are onto me. And there's some
Mm.
sort of like danger in explanation culture. Like we
You're
shouldn't
right.
have to explain it away ourselves and defend ourselves, and we shouldn't have to use labels so commonly. So I hope that culture understands itself for what it is, which is a deeply hurt baby that wants to be seen. And I hope those babies can be
Mm-hmm.
seen and that we can all wake up and focus on more important things.
Wow, that's really good. Yeah, the when you said some of the stuff about that, like from my perspective, labels are ways that demons get into people. And I would also say that like when you say I'm a this, I'm a that, there's aspects of whatever that label is that you don't line up with. There is parts of whatever you say you're this, and there's parts of you that don't line up with that label. And when you do that, what happens is an aspect of you goes, well, I have to fit this label because I said I'm this, right? And when you have to fit the label, you start to compromise your heart, your ideas, your conviction, your personal conviction, because you're told, well, I got to fit this. That's why, like, you'll develop a lisp if you say you're gay or something as a guy, and it's like this kind of thing is like, this is behaviors that we do that, like, literally you're compromising your own personal perspective because you found something with this label to be attractive. And you will, and that's like denying yourself in so many ways. And it puts people in a state of delusion to the point where when I look around society, like 99% of people are delusioned at this point. Like they all have this perspective on their mind where they think they're one way that they're not, or they think that they have this thing that they don't. And it's like they've trapped themselves in this perspective of this role that they feel that they have to fulfill. And really it's so empty. And like you were saying, the reason why these people are so unseen is because of the white picket fence thing ideology that they've sold us. And like the idea that, oh, you have your 2.5 children and you live in a little house and you have your little space and your little white picket fence. And like, bro, that is the biggest lie that they have told us, because we're not designed to be people that are alone. Like we are community creatures. So to have a fence, like that's the dream, to be what, separated from your community? What are you talking about? You're crazy. That's the reason why you like go to other countries and you see little poor kids and they're like happy in their hut with their whole family living in one dirt hut space, and it's like they have more joy because they're at least living in that community space that we were intended to live in, unlike America that seems to be pushing this narrative of, you know, whatever nonsense, be alone and have your money in your big empty house. Why do you think all the people die? Why do you think all the committed suicide people are in the richest? It's all in America. Like I think we have the highest rate of suicide, and it's just like, for what reason? Because we're sold a lie that you got to fit into this little category of the white picket fence alone by yourself. And people like condemn one another all the time and then judge people and then cut people off and go, oh, he said this and I'm not going to receive that. And so I can't even be friends with that guy. Oh, she said that. And so like, I'm done with her, done. And it's like, bro, you've done this. People have done this to their families, to their friends, to everybody. And they think that that's the right answer, but it's not love. It's not love at all. It's not what Jesus told us to do whatsoever. It's not like, you know, Jesus told us to love one another and to urge in community. And I don't know if you know about the study of the rats where they gave them drugs.
Yeah, there's a lot of drug rat studies. Which one?
The one where they did the heroin water and the normal water and they put them in a normal
Yeah.
cage.
Yeah, for the
Yeah.
intermittent reinforcement.
Yeah, and it was like
Hmm.
the rat by itself would drink the heroin water till it died. But you put the rat
Yeah.
in a cage with other rats in other community and they'd test it once and then they would never touch it again.
Hmm.
Because they were in the right space, which was community, and that was a better feeling than just being on drugs.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think you nailed it so well. I think, wow, that's actually really deep. That our obsession with having some sort of identity and some sort of label stems from the fact that we're basically lost in terms of connection and community. And so we're trying to create some sort of narcissistic, insulated community of one,
Mm-hmm.
where we try to prove to the world that we are whole by whatever we are. Like someone's a dog or a cat today, tomorrow people are going to be muffins and all sorts of weird things. Like whatever you need to be to convince yourself that you can sustain by yourself. That's
Mm-hmm.
actually really, really profound. I also want to let you know I have a 20% battery issue on my phone. I'm so sorry. For everyone
Fine.
listening, I've just brought so many technological issues today. It's my fault.
You're totally fine. You're totally fine. But yeah, no, and you say, and like, see, when you put a label on it, it kind of gives you that sense of community. And this is why the homeless people actually are staying homeless, because once you're homeless, you have a community, whether it's a community of people just like deprived in their own rejection and feelings of whatever, like you've at least got a community. It's better than whatever you had with your white picket fence in your house alone. Like, that's why people stay there.
Yeah, I would say the reason for the hedonism that we see in the world today is what you're saying. It's people find a sense of community through their sin. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not one, when I say sin, I don't mean it in a guilt ridden way. It means, missing the mark. I sinned yesterday. I was mean to someone yesterday. I think we all need to be a bit more casual with admitting when we've sinned so we can talk about it and stop using it as a way to force guilt onto people, because that's what I think disturbs
Yeah.
people about the Christian
Mm-hmm.
movement, is that they feel so guilt ridden naturally and then more guilt is put on them and then it just festers. But I think that hedonistic rituals like sex parties or like drug parties or new age movements where they get together and they just dissociate, you know, at least you're dissociating in communal form. And so you have a sense of community. And a lot
Mhm.
of people economically are struggling right now. So it's almost as if this sort of distorted economic system of lack in terms of abundance is also pushing people into these obscure communities where people are living together in toxic scenarios and they're trying to make the best of it, but it's turning into weird situations because when humans are living from a state of fear and from a state of lack, that's no way to form a community. I think that community has to come from a place of safety and a place of understanding and a place of clear perception. And as long as we're spiraling from a place of fear, we're not going to pull in the right connections and the right people. And I think our state of consciousness directs our friendship, our web of friendship. And that is something that we have to reframe in the coming era so we can therefore find the right souls.
Yeah, I would say yeah, I would say it seems like that seems to be the things that we're dealing with right now are definitely they seem minuscule in some ways, but I think they are greatly affecting our direction of society for sure. And it just seems like, oh, I'm a trans whatever today, and it's like, oh, that's just a one kid making that decision, cutting themselves off, cutting their penis off or whatever because they feel like they're something that they're not, which to me is just, I mean, that's absurd. It's like if you want to mutilate your body, like if I was like, I believe I shouldn't have pinky fingers. I'm a person without pinky fingers. I'm a person. Like, is the solution? You know what? Cut his pinky off, man. Cut his pinky. That'll fix him. He believes he's a person without pinky fingers. Cut his pinky off. He'll be so much happier. Like, bro, this is not healthy, and this is destroying the reality of things. That's delusion, and to me, I don't know what your thoughts on that are, but yeah, go for it.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's ironic that we went from a culture where cutting yourself, like the emos who used to do that when
Mhm.
we were children, they would tell us, the adults, that this wasn't okay and that we didn't need to cut ourselves. And then you grow up into adulthood, and now other adults are fighting for the right for their children to self mutilate. And
Wow. Yeah.
I'm really a big proponent of freedom because I feel like if someone wants to go out and explore a different identity, that's fine. But the minute that your identity includes the shedding of blood, it is a sign that it has moved from the sector of identity to the sector of instability. And at that point, I
Mhm.
think you need help. And I don't want to judge those people or um, even be confused by them in any way, because I feel like they're doing this from a place of feeling unseen, and I really really understand the pain of that. But it's just so sad that our society has set itself up to, it's like if I'm punching myself in the face and someone comes along and says, let me help you, and they punch me in the face, and then we call that
Terrible.
person a psychologist. That is
Oh
so
my
wild.
gosh. That is such a good analogy to put it. Like, that's kind of hilarious, actually. Like, let me punch you. Let me help you. Let me punch you in the face since you're doing it yourself. Oh man, it's terrible, but it's literally what we're experiencing. This is literally what we're dealing with right now. It's insane. And so the world right now is so unfortunately affected by this kind of negative ideology that it is it's tragic, really. It's really tragic.
Yeah, yeah,
The
I agree.
I would say the other thing I would say is that, when it comes to the direction, like a lot of these things, these topics, I'm glad we've not talked about anything. We haven't talked at all. So I was just like, hey, come on. You're like, okay. Like, so I'm glad that there's like, I could just tell by having this conversation with you that there's a lot of level-headed mindset that you have, regardless of whatever differences we have in our theological perspective or whatever. There's a unity in understanding truth, because truth is, it seems pretty logical in a lot of ways, and from what I've dealt with, like, I do tend to see these things as, you mentioned shedding of blood. Demons love blood, and there's a lot about demons that people don't know. But I will tell you right now, one of the best ways demons get into people is through trauma, and they need trauma. And so that's why, there's a lot of people that are like the homosexual, and a lot of times they were molested as children, and this is pretty obviously well known in this understanding, which is unfortunate. But that's a trauma, and they're usually molested by somebody that they love, or somebody that they thought that loved them in a lot of capacities. But and that creates trauma, which evokes demons that go into people that start whispering ideas into their head. Same thing with cutting. And so, like, when you're cutting the blood and your skin is open with this, like, demons go into these kind of entries. So, like you'll notice that, like, people that are cutting a lot of times are opening themselves up, literally opening themselves up for something demonic to try to fester into them. And so this is actually one of the processes that demonic infusion happens. It's through a ritual abuse. That's why they want to, like, hurt children all the time, the elites, and they do this kind of stuff. It's like literally an abuse vessel that makes trauma, and trauma creates the state of disassociation. Because, like, let's say somebody was, like, molested by the person that they love, right? Their dad molests them. All of a sudden, that's such a traumatic experience that their brain, like, goes, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening to me. What's happening to me? What's," and you shut down, and your spirit leaves your body. You shut down, and and the experience happens to you, and then you come back to your body, and then a lot of times people don't even remember it. This is crazy. A lot of times people won't remember the trauma, the very traumatic things they've happened, because they were so, like, "Oh my gosh, this is happening, what is happening?" And then boom, they zone out. We call it zoning out, or even meditating in some capacity. Meditation can be a form of training your mind to be disassociated. And so, like, this kind of practice, though, is what leads to people that basically allow entities to come into them and get access to them. And this is kind of how demonic things happen. And I don't know if you ever heard about people that meditate. I had a few people twice. I've had somebody tell me about a meditation situation. They went so deep into meditation that they completely disassociated, and then they lost control of their body. And one person told me that they lost control of their body and they woke up like a week later, and they didn't even know. They didn't, like, for a whole week, the person was telling me that, like, they just don't even know what happened. Apparently they had gone to some events, they did some stuff that was crazy. They never even couldn't even imagine, like, the whole week they were completely out of control from just disassociating, meditating, to the point where something else came into them and took control of them, and then something lived their life for a week, which is, like, crazy to think about this kind of stuff. Because it's like we can look at these contexts and be like, "Oh, well, maybe you're just making something up for this." But I've had this told to me by multiple people, where they've, like, meditated so much to a point where they were no longer able to control their body. It was like emptiness, void, and then all of a sudden something hit. And so these are demons, and this is what I deal with, and I talk with people about this kind of stuff. I don't know what your thoughts are on any of that. If you have an interesting perspective, go for it.
Yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
in Sanskrit, they call the orifices, the way in which you can enter into the body, the Navadwara. And it was common practice to protect these entryways into the body, the mouth, the eyes, the nose, the lower pelvic parts, because the degree to which you are relaxed around anything coming into your body, the degree to which you're not protecting what comes into the body, is the degree to which anything can simply come in. And this is why trauma targets orifices. Even if
Mm-hmm.
it's emotional trauma, it targets that through the voice, through speaking. It targets it through the eyes, through disturbing the eyes, through disturbing the ears. Trauma targets the parts of us that feel through those Navadwara. And then when the trauma enters into our being, into our body, the trauma itself can sometimes act like an entity, and maybe there's an entity connected to it. That's up for whoever's listening to decide what they feel. But I do believe that we live in a world where we're taught to abuse our Navadwara and to put, Pringles or unhealthy foods into our bodies, or to put
Mm-hmm.
unhealthy textures into our ears, and to see unhealthy things through Netflix or whatever. And through this conditioning of re traumatizing ourselves every day, we have created a collective structure where we are inflicting self harm upon ourselves. All of us are. And through that, we are becoming our own gateway to these lower realms. And the good thing about this is that the solution is simple to the degree in which you protect your Navadwara, the degree in which you only let the highest foods, the wholest foods into your mouth and the most purest images in through your visual capacity. So what I like about this is the complexities of the dark they run very deep, but the simplicity of keeping yourself protected is very consistent. And so sometimes the answers are simple sounding, but sometimes complex in the way that we've become addicted to watching and participating in our own destruction. Therefore, all we have to do is unhook ourselves from the addiction of destruction and rehook ourselves into healthy things like healthy foods, healthy relationships, healthy connections. So the good thing is that we have more power than we think.
Definitely. I mean, definitely. That's a thing that it's interesting. In the new age sort of sphere, a lot of people believe in like energy and power. And it's very fascinating because I deal with praying for people and casting out demons. And when I talk to new age people, it's actually easier for me to communicate to them about like what Jesus was talking about, like what was really going on, than it is for a lot of Christians that get kind of blocked in their perspective. Because like the energy stuff that is kind of, it's kind of real in a way. Like people just don't realize how real some of that stuff is. There's something else that you mentioned right before we show the show, that you watched the Mysterious Universe podcast, and I thought that was awesome because that's the only podcast I ever watched. Really, was the Mysterious Universe podcast, which I thought was like, dude, I watched a bunch of their stuff too because I thought it was super cool and very fascinating subject. For those that don't know, Mysterious Universe is a pretty cool podcast. I was always waiting for them to get to the point where they realize that it's all demons and Nephilim is pretty much like everything that they're talking about, and they never got there fully. But they definitely seem to get really close to a lot of that. But it's super super fascinating subject. I'm kind of curious, since you watched a lot of that stuff. Have you do you know about the Nephilim much? What do you know? Do you know about when it comes to the Nephilim or demons, stuff like that?
I know a bit about that, and just so you know, the phone might die in the next few minutes. But
Mm.
yeah, I do
What? Oh wait, what's your battery at?
like 8.
8. Okay, cool. All right. Well, it's kind of working. But so you do know about Nephilim stuff. The phone like cut out pretty bad. But the so have you ever read the Book of Enoch?
I haven't. I've just read about it, but I haven't read it.
Oh, okay. Okay, it's a very interesting subject. And if you know all the stuff in Mysterious Universe, if you read the Book of Enoch, puzzle pieces in your mind are gonna go like click, 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 and you're gonna go, oh my gosh. Because I don't know, like what a lot of what I talk about is the fact that all religions are the same, but they've stemmed from basically the Book of Enoch. Like the Book of Enoch and like stems, like you'll understand Hinduism. Like I know, I've studied Hinduism, I've studied all the religions. All of the religions have a root, and it all comes back to these fallen angels that manipulated and controlled everything. And in fact, they're the guys in the Epstein files still working with this stuff. And you start to realize like the pattern of it like tends to lean back to these fallen angels and these Nephilim. And I don't know if did you hear about Gilgamesh tomb that was in the Epstein files?
I didn't.
Yeah, so there was a Hillary Clinton had asked once a long time ago in a leak from WikiLeaks where the resurrection tomb of Gilgamesh was, and people are like, "What? What are you talking about? The resurrection?" So this is a character from the Bible who's like a bad dude, obvious, and he's connected to the Nephilim. And so you're like, that's pretty weird. Why is there somebody in our office literally talking about what supposedly is fictional? And then in the Epstein files, apparently there was another document that came out about Gilgamesh that was leading to some more interesting stuff that was like alluding to the idea that somebody figured out that part of the reason why we might have gone into Iraq, the weapons of mass destruction lie that they told us, might have been simply just to dig up the tomb of this guy Gilgamesh and like find Gilgamesh, which is pretty crazy when you start to like look into some of these kind of things, because you're like, that's something that they told us was not real, or that it's fairy tales, but it's like straight up right there in the Epstein files. Um, and yeah, I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
yeah, I think that the substrata, the core of why these crazy things are happening in the world, it all appears economical and financial, but I think in the end of the day it's actually rooted in mysticism and energy. And this is why I can appreciate facets of the new age, but also I feel that Christianity is a deeply mystical religion, and I feel that the Bible itself is one of the most mystical books, and I mean that in a good way. So I think if people just started understanding their mystical heritage to a deeper degree, we could start to understand that a lot of what they tell us isn't as physically simple as what we've been told. And I think there's something to that. Yeah, I don't have much to say other than that, but yeah.
Okay, well that's pretty cool. So the one more thing I wanted to mention was that if we've still got battery left, we'll see if it lasts. Because you're getting your battery, I think, is getting low. It's getting real glitchy for some reason. But the is the one last thing I want to talk about is like the fact that the evil that's being put out in these Epstein files. The can you hear me all right, by the way? Because you're super glitchy. You can hear me good.
Yeah.
Okay. The evil that's being put out in these Epstein files, I think, is kind of like, I've tried to figure out why they are doing this. Like, why are they allowing this to go out? And the more I've like started to understand like why is this being put out there, it's starting to make sense, because I talk to random people now. Like, I would go around and I'd be like, hey, is like, who killed Charlie Kirk? I would just ask people, and I would just like straight up say it. But and people would be like, really? I haven't thought about that. But dude, every person I've been randomly encountering, I've just been like, have you checked the Epstein files? Like, everyone knows about it, but nothing is being done. And it's almost like, I don't know what your thoughts on that would be, but it seems very it seems like not in a good thing. It seems like not a good thing that there's this going out there and everybody is being desensitized to this evil. Like, we should be saying things about this and people should be like shocked. They should be like, "Oh my gosh," but unfortunately, they're not. And there's people that, we've studied this. We obviously know there's a lot of evil going on, but for the normal people that hear this should be so shocked and that they should be moved to doing something. But right now they put this out there in this way that's just like, oh, it's happening, and we almost accept it. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that. What do you think about that? Mhm.
I think we're in a phase of human shock. I think when something so obscure and dark occurs, down for a bit to try to process it, because the thing is that these people, what they're doing is from the realm of monsters. This is not something a human can do by itself. And that is taken over by a demon or a monster can do that. You have humans who don't understand how monsters act, and they're in a state of shock. I actually do think that people will start letting their anger come forward in the future. And I don't think it's complete of growth that occur with every humanistic exposure that occurs on the timeline. There's also degrees of de-evolution and entropy that can occur too. And it's all based off the human spirit split, where some people will become increasingly dissociated and confused and stuck and lost upon seeing the evidence of such dark things. And then I associated, like you were talking about earlier, I think that that's actually going to create communities and safe havens within the world where people understand darkness, and therefore it's not allowed. Because we do, and I feel a split of optimism mixed with that in the future, and there's going to be like two different realities probably next to each other.
Huh. It's interesting. The a lot of what you said broke up and it like totally glitched out, but I think I kind of got the gist of it. I think your phone's getting to the point where we'll just have to we'll have to end it now because it's getting so glitchy. But you'll we'll I'll have you on again and we'll like talk in more detail and then like and you'll be set up more with more better equipment maybe. And then we'll get things we'll get some more conversation going because I think this is important that we all talk about this kind of stuff and we share these kind of ideas with one another and we don't judge each other. We don't just go, "Oh, you're this, oh, you're that." It doesn't matter. Like the reality is we're all human. And no matter what, if I was grew up in your situation with your the way you look, the way you experience life, I might as well just have ended up exactly like you. And to think that we're any different other than that, I think is wrong. Like, you know, it's to be prideful, to assume that you think you'll be any different than any other person. If you grew up with their brain, their life experiences, and you would turn out any different, I think that's very prideful and wrong. And that's where I think a lot of judgment comes from. That's why I think we should all be willing to talk with one another and operate in love and unity and forgiveness for each other, not judgment or condemnation or guilt, like you were like a lot of unfortunately a lot of Christian people will put that one out there. You're right, but the but we need to walk in that unity and find the common ground and like basically love each other. And so, anyways, well, I'm glad you came on.
Thank you. Thank you
We're,
so much. You're so sweet.
where can people find you? You gotta put your tell them how to find you and all your stuff.
Yeah, they can just type maryisalien.com.
Okay, and that's your tag on Instagram. And is Instagram where you're the most active?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. And then and you've got a YouTube channel that you're trying to grow as well. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's got to be something if you guys can subscribe or whatever. Um
Yeah, that is also
mhm.
Mary is Alien.
Okay, same thing. All right, awesome. Yeah,
Thank you.
so thanks for coming on and talking with me and sharing some stuff and talking philosophy and we'll do it again and hopefully we won't have as much computer issues next time.
Thank you. Thank you so
Awesome.
much. God bless you.
All right, you too. Absolutely.